Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Adam Burke from BangTheBook.com, coming to you with my Monday mashup video here. Want to chat a little bit of college basketball on this video, so go ahead and do that in a couple of seconds. But first, I want to tell you about what's going on over at BangTheBook.com right now. Very busy NFL day for me. All 4 wildcard weekend games have been previewed over there. I put those together, and then also our opening line report for the wildcard weekend. So, got you fully covered here for the early week stuff, and then as we go throughout the week, my cast of writers will be putting together some more best bets, prop betting picks, power ratings, things of that sort here for the wild card weekend. Very busy week in the NHL as well, and Parker Michael's killing it in the NHL this season, so you want to check that out. Good breakdowns on today's edition of Bang the Book Radio with Joe Everett regarding the wild card weekend. We broke down all 4 games. Also talked a little bit about Black Monday in the NFL with all the head coaching firings and things of that sort. So, good edition of Bang the Book Radio today. I talked at the end of the show about some New Year's betting resolutions that you may want to keep in mind as we head on in to 2019. And as we head on into 2019, lots of conference play in college basketball. That's what I want to talk about here on this Monday mashup video. And let's start by talking about one of the simplest handicapping tools that you can use at this time of the year. That is comparing strength of schedule. Sounds very obvious. It's something that I imagine the books know that people are going to do, but still, the books have to put up a number based on their power ratings, based on the evaluations that they have of these teams. Maybe they're not adjusting those for strength of schedule. They leave that up to the bettors. I think a lot of times we overcomplicate what the odds makers are actually doing to set these numbers and kind of cost ourselves some edges in that regard. So I wanted to touch on this and give you several examples here for this week in college basketball. Let's start with a couple of teams that we all know, Purdue and Iowa. Purdue 8-5 straight up on the season here so far. Iowa 11-2. One big difference between these two teams, though, is that Purdue has played the 16th ranked schedule per Ken Pomeroy. Iowa has played the 258th ranked schedule per Ken Pomeroy. I also like to use Bart Torvik because I think that the markets rely so much on Ken Pomeroy and all the work that he does. Over at Bart Torvik's website, he groups games into quadrants. Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, and Quadrant 4. And those are based on the strength of the teams and where he has them ranked in his system over there. Purdue already has played 4 Quadrant 1 games, 3 on the road, 1 a neutral site game, all of those losses. Iowa 1-2 in their Quadrant 1 games with 2 home losses. So Purdue played a very difficult schedule here so far and a lot of difficult road games. They're at home for this one against an Iowa team that has played 3 quality opponents per the Bart Torvik ratings and has lost 2 of those games with those losses coming at home. So maybe Purdue in a pretty good spot here. And keep in mind, too, that you're going to have a lot of people coming into the college basketball betting market now that haven't been paying a whole hell of a lot of attention. What happens in those situations is that they'll look at team records and say, oh, well, this team's good, or, oh, well, this team is bad, while not applying a lot of context to what these teams have done so far. Some of these teams have played much more difficult schedules, as I'm talking about here in this video. So you can use that to your advantage. Look for those strength of schedule mismatches because, again, a lot of these teams rated and evaluated based on their body of work here so far from a power rating standpoint. So that's where we can maybe get some edges over the sports books with so many games for them to try and line now that we're into conference play. Let's talk about another one here. This one in the AAC between Temple and UCF. Temple and UCF both 10-2 straight up, but not all 10-2 records at this time of the year are created equal, as we know. Temple's played the 138th ranked schedule. UCF's played the 240th ranked schedule. Temple's got 4 quad 1 or quad 2 games for Bart Torvik. UCF has only played 1 of them. They lost at Missouri. This game down in Orlando here coming up on Wednesday. But again, it's one of those examples where Temple's played a much more difficult schedule and they've played some tough road and neutral site games. So going down to Orlando here should not bother them at all. Not to say that I would advocate a play on Temple necessarily, because I don't know what this line is going to be on Wednesday, but it is a starting point for your handicap to look for these strength of schedule differences. Now the AAC, kind of on the fringes of being one of the major conferences in college basketball. I think you've got the primary five, the Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and ACC. I would put the Big East in there as well. The AAC kind of on the fringes of that, with some teams like Cincinnati or Houston off to a very good start. So these strength of schedule mismatches are very obvious when you talk about the premier and premium conferences. But if you dig a little bit deeper here and look at some of the smaller conferences, the mid and low majors out there, you're going to find a lot of games with big strength of schedule discrepancies because a lot of these teams need to play, they challenge themselves with the schedule. They play a very strong non-conference schedule. They fill the schedule with power opponents because they need to fill the coffers for the athletic department. They're going to travel out to, the Marquettes or the Creightons or the Dukes of the world to get that paycheck for that game so that they can fund the athletic department. So you've got some very, very big strength of schedule mismatches in the low major conferences. This one's more of a mid-major, but Marshall and Old Dominion. These two teams play here this week. Marshall, the 104th ranked schedule according to KenPom. Old Dominion, 317th. Now, Old Dominion did win on the road at Syracuse. Very big win for them. Lost at home to VCU, St. Joe's, and Oregon State on a neutral. But you look at Marshall here this year, they've played 4 games classified as Quad 1 or Quad 2 over at Bart Torvik's website. Losses at Maryland, at Virginia, to A&M on the road, and then at home to Toledo, who turns out to be a pretty good team here so far this year. But Old Dominion, very, very good defensive team year in and year out, but they have played one of the weakest schedules in college basketball this year. You have to factor that in to your handicap for that game. How about Samford? Samford off to a very, very good start. They're 11-4. So is East Tennessee State. What's the difference in this game, you ask? Well, Samford, the 337th ranked schedule out of 353 teams, according to Ken Pomeroy. East Tennessee State, 187th. So whose 11-4 record are you going to believe more? East Tennessee State or Samford? Now, of course, East Tennessee State will be favored in this game, and they have been one of the better teams in this conference over the last few years, but you're probably not going to pay that big of a premium here on the Buccaneers because Samford has played so well so far this season. So again, a game where you want to factor that into the equation. How about Monmouth? They take on Iona, a couple of teams in the MAAC that have gotten some national headlines recently. Monmouth lost a ton from last year's team, but what they didn't lose was their strength of schedule. They've played the 39th ranked schedule in the country. They have 1 win. Iona, 123rd ranked schedule, they have 2 wins. So it works both ways here, where you can look at some teams that have played very weak schedules and still aren't having a whole lot of success. How about we go to the Big Sky, for example? Eastern Washington on the road at Idaho here coming up on January 3rd. Eastern Washington is only 3-10, and they've been a very good team in the Big Sky Conference for quite some time. Bad start to the season, but they've played the 38th ranked schedule in the country. Idaho, the 291st ranked schedule in the country, and they are 3-9. So for Eastern Washington, getting into conference play with some comparable or weaker competition, you would certainly think that the Eagles are going to be on the rise here very, very soon at Eastern Washington, and it could start as early as that game against Idaho. How about FIU on the road at Middle Tennessee State on Thursday night? Middle Tennessee State has played the 2nd ranked schedule in the country, according to KenPom. Over at Bart Torvik's website, MTSU has played 6 Quadrant 1 games. 6 of them. They've played a brutal schedule so far, lost a lot from last year's team, along with head coach Kermit Davis, but they've been really battle-tested here so far. FIU, 0 Quad 1 games. Over at Bart Torvik's website, they're 9-4 on the season, but they've played the 275th ranked schedule. MTSU, again, the 2nd ranked schedule. So even though MTSU lost a lot from last year, dropping down in class should be a big help for them here as they look to get back on track. So you can really use strength of schedule to your advantage. I think it's a very important college basketball handicapping tool early on in the conference play season because some of these teams go from playing a lot of powers to playing a lot of comparable or inferior competition, and you can find some good edges there in those types of games. We'll be talking about that more on Bang the Book Radio over the next week, couple of weeks, as we get into conference play and sort of make that transition from talking all football, or almost all football, to some more NBA and some more college basketball. So strength of schedule, very, very important. That's the topic here for this Monday mashup video. We'll see if I get to a Tuesday 3-pack tomorrow, obviously with the New Year's Day holiday. Not a whole lot of games going on, so we'll probably just come to you Wednesday with our Wednesday weekend look-ahead video. But I'm Adam Burke from BangTheBook.com.